This one's for you.
This is Coast to Coast AM with George Noory.
So have you ever heard of electronic harassment? Taking place when someone uses electronic devices to invade your privacy, invade your property. What about biochip implants, huh? They're just starting to come to market. And what is the real purpose behind all of those? And hey, what about the barcode? Remember when you go shopping? What is that all about, too? My guest, Roger Tolces, will be back with him in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Roger Tolces is a Los Angeles private investigator that specializes in electronic countermeasures. In the past 30 years, he has swept, listen to this now, more than 2,500 locations for bugs and wiretaps. He has worked for millionaires, gangsters, who would they be? Movie stars, superstar athletes, cult leaders, politicians, doctors, lawyers, real estate moguls, psychics, UFO contactees, gamblers, casinos, sport betting operations, boiler room operators, smugglers, union leaders, aircraft builders, soldiers of fortune, madams, cult deprogrammers, diplomats, arms dealers, name a few. In recent years, his business has included helping victims of electronic harassment. Electronic harassment takes place if someone uses any electronic device to aid them in invading your person or property for the purpose of gathering information illegally or for the purpose of causing physical harm to you. Mr. Tolces uses more than $100,000 of high-tech equipment to try to identify the sources of electronic harassment. Welcome tonight, Roger, to Coast. How are you?
Hey, thank you, George. Terrific to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. By the way, are our phones bugged out as we speak? Are we okay?
Everybody's phones are pre-wired for bugs these days under the CALEA laws.
Oh, really?
We can talk about that, yeah.
I did not know that.
They added a tax on to every person paying a phone bill, and they implemented pre-wiring not only your telephones but your ISP lines and also pagers.
The privacy has gone out the window, isn't it?
Well, this is a very serious matter. You know, this is something we really need to spend some time on tonight because our constitutional rights are getting crushed.
Compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when did you really start seeing these rights getting whittled away?
Well, it didn't happen as fast as I expected because, you know, with 1984, that book was truly, he was a visionary, George Orwell.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, if you even go and read that now, I've got an original copy here that I bought off eBay recently in I think it's 1947. But this fellow really saw it coming. And of course, you know, it's a lot of what he's talking about in terms of a TV camera in everybody's home hasn't really been implemented yet. But you know, then you think back a month or two ago where there was a case in the courts where the police had actually used a thermal detection system to look through the walls of
I remember that case.
The individual's house and detect that he was growing marijuana plants by the heat. So there was that particular case it was fortunate that the courts found that since this particular electronic device did go inside the home, that it was unacceptable. And they did kick that case out and say that type of measurement, because it did go within the borders of the home, was a Fourth Amendment violation. So there was a win on that one. But still, the point is that we now have computers in our homes. A lot of people have TV cameras hooked to those computers, and if you're a competent hacker, then you can not only just dial someone's computer up, but then probably turn their TV camera on as well.
They might not even know it. People in the homes might be walking around and not even know that somebody's spying on them.
Yeah, you wouldn't even. As a matter of fact, you know, this whole law, this whole Patriot Bill, which is another very bad piece of news for privacy, discusses them invading your computers and doing that almost without a warrant. Really what they're talking about there is instead of a normal warrant where they knock on your door and hand you the paper, and the paper states what they're looking for and state that it's authorized by a judicial officer and that kind of thing. Now they can do a surreptitious entry, copy your hard drive, photograph your papers, and send you a notification somewhere 30, 60 days down the line after the fact.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, this is in the new Patriot bill.
Well, you know, and Ashcroft wants to get in Patriot Bill 2, and Bush is a little opposed to doing that right now at this point. There is that fine line, Roger, between invasion of privacy and national or security in general of the American public. And how do you distinguish that fine line? Because somebody's going to cross over it and say, look, we're doing it to help you.
Well, it's mission creep is the real problem. You know, originally they say, well, we're only going to do this much because it makes sense to do this much. But next thing you know, especially when you're dealing with government agencies and the fact that they absorb so much money in their budgets and they constantly want to spend all the money and get more the following year, add more agents and expand their powers. You know, the Founding Fathers, when you go back to the original Constitution, the Founding Fathers had very little they wanted the federal government to do. You know, the states basically were the sovereigns,
right?
And all they wanted the federal government to do is to regulate commerce between the states and make treaties with other countries, and hold a standing army. Very limited powers, and of course, we've had this monster federal expansion, and now we're talking $6 trillion in debt.
Electronic harassment or harassment, depending on how one likes to say it, has been around. I used to see these old movies where some guy would climb a telephone pole and hook up these little wires and listen in on some conversation. Now, as you say, it's gotten so easy. I mean, I bet the American public, I bet us, we don't even understand or comprehend just how easy it is to tap into us, is there?
Yeah, sure. Well, with this new CALEA law, basically, you're on a wide area network to the federal agencies. All they have to do is go on their wide area network, or they can actually use an internet link as well. And they can throw a switch and bring all your conversations right into their database.
Incredible.
Right to their hard drive. And there are softwares, one software called Lincoln. I don't know where they came up with that one. It's almost humorous. But at any rate, there's a software company that facilitates collecting all this information, digitally organizing it. And not only that, but what it also does is that as you make outgoing calls and outgoing numbers, call people, it will make a computer graphic network pattern of everybody that you call. In other words, as each new party comes on that you make a dial, that you dial up, it comes on as a box in this diagram that it keeps adding to.
It creates like a map.
Exactly. It creates a map of all your contacts and people.
Are there buzzwords, too, that this software picks up? I mean, if somebody talks about a bomb or terrorist activity, does that kick that stuff up, too?
Well, it could. It could, because basically you're digitizing the words, and then it's just voice recognition stuff. Once they've got a sample of your voice pattern, almost like in the home computer systems where the system asks you to say certain words to begin to recognize the way not only your voice but the way you inflect things, and that way it accommodates its voice recognition system. So yeah, and of course the NSA has been doing that for quite some time, and they do it on international calls. For sure, but then again, I really feel that we're getting so gray area about where do these covert agencies really have jurisdiction to operate. Before this 9/11 incident, they were really limited to operating outside the United States, and now it's a whole different ballgame. Now we're talking about having Central Intelligence active here inside the country, and all the consequences with having people spying on people within the country itself.
Yeah. Well, what's the concern? Is the concern the fact that they're infringing on our rights of privacy, or is the concern that in the hands of some unscrupulous people, leaders, that something else could happen?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's happening, and especially in this Patriot bill, is they seem to be moving away from getting judicial authorization. In other words, it's almost like, well, we don't really have time because of terrorists now.
We're just going to do it on our own. Boom.
To bother a judge. We're just going to go ahead and do it. You listen to Ashcroft talk about this, and this is how they got this roving wiretap business in. Before, you had to have a court order for every phone you were going to tap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they get this blanket order saying that, well, George Noory didn't make a difference what George Noory goes on. We have the authority to get it.
Mm-hmm.
George goes on a cell phone, and we're just going to get the cell phone. So no matter what means of communication you jump to, they will jump to it without getting additional judicial authorization. And a lot of the Patriot Bill, seems to get into this administrative stuff in the sense that you're no longer getting judicial authorization. So you're breaching the balance of powers. The reason they set up the government with the judicial, legislative and executive branch was that these sections would check one another. And so what we're getting away from is now that we're too busy for that, chasing terrorists. So we're going to abbreviate all that. We're not going to have one section check the other. We're just going to do everything administratively.
Has it been technology, Roger, that is allowing this to happen at such a pace?
Definitely. It's just unbelievable the speed in which things are going.
What are some of the tools out there for people, and some of the things, of course, that you do to try to combat it? But what are they using to kind of spy on us?
Well, first of all, the most insidious is the fact that everybody's pre-wired. There isn't anything to do other than for them to get on a computer and hit some keystrokes on a keyboard. And it's done. And it's a done deal. Sure, everything that you say, everything that goes across your computer as far as your, keyboard. And then, even passwords can be gotten if they're using a keystroke software that's been installed.
Sure.
In other words, the way they break your passwords is make a covert entry into your home and stick a software in there, and that software takes down every keystroke, and then you can email the keystrokes out, or they can come back and pick them up by taking them out of the machine on a disk.
It's amazing.
Yeah, well, it's very serious. It really is. And then, this George Orwell thing, I wanted to go back to George Orwell for a minute because you might recall that in the Orwell book, the justification for everybody giving up their privacy was the fact that there was this dark, unknown force out there. Big Brother talks about it. He says, they were kind of like the evildoers. We don't really know who they are, but we know that they're prepared to destroy us and they're prepared to attack us at any time. So we all need to be under this perpetual surveillance so that we can combat this unknown force. It's really amazing. If you go back and read this Orwell book, it's incredible.
He had a vision of 9/11, perhaps.
Well, that whole thing's been, there's been a lot of places. You look at, you go back to the Reichstag building where Hitler blew up his own Reichstag building.
Yes.
And he wanted to implement gun control and control of the populations, and so that was something that he did. And now we're finding out more about Pearl Harbor as well, that there really was intelligence about Pearl Harbor, but yet nothing seems to have been done about Pearl Harbor because that, they wanted that war commitment. They wanted that reason to get all those young men at that time to prepare to go to fight in Europe, which really wasn't, fighting our own shores. So a lot of times these people that are in power tend to think that the sacrificing people for the good cause, the cause of
whatever their issue is.
Whatever, right? Well, the New World Order. We can use the word. George Bush Sr. is the guy that brought that in, and that's a real factor because there really are forces that would like to remove the constitutions of the countries and move everything under international corporation control. Have international corporations control all the assets of the world. Have one national army that would, or international.
They want one national court.
And one national court, and that's it. Everybody gets a chip under their skin. So they've got everybody figured, on an identity from womb to tomb, and then that's it.
It's happening faster and faster and faster. And I don't think it's going to slow down, and I don't think it can be stopped. Now, of course, you spend your whole life checking these things. How do you feel about that?
Well, my sense of it is that in America you can get as much freedom as you're willing to stand up for.
Mm-hmm.
I myself personally, I have studied law for 6 years. I have a law library in my house that's mostly constitutional books, but I've got about $6,000 worth of law books. So that's the way I handle it. And, you really need to study the Founding Fathers and their true intention for this country.
A lot of people, though, Roger, don't stand together. And so what could happen in this particular case is, as those rights are chipped away and as technology continues to get better, it'll be all done and we won't even know it.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing about the sedation of television. Television, part of what my objection is, and I don't watch a whole lot of television, is that, if you're talking about a mind control element, television is truly probably the single most influential mind control machine that they've come up with.
Without a doubt.
They have done tests where they have taken brainwaves of people that are, regular TV watchers,
Mm-hmm.
and they find that a typical TV watcher, someone who watches 6 hours a night, when they switch the TV on with their heads in a brainwave machine, they found that their brainwaves went into that alpha euphoric state within 17 seconds.
Jeez.
And of course, in that particular state, that's when your subconscious is most open. It was a really interesting research. They found that everybody just kind of like drifts off into the never land.
Yeah, la la land, and
yeah. So if you add football, beer, and soap operas and all the rest of the entertainment things, then really what you're doing is dumbing down America, and they're getting further and further away from what was the force and the concept that made America great.
So what's the underlining reason for this kind of control? What do they want?
Well, control is it.
That's the key.
Sure, yeah. And but the thing about it now is they really have the tools to do it. In other words, when you had 100 million or 200 million people, how do you keep track of that? It was impossible to do that. You really couldn't keep track of it. But now when you've got computers that have such incredible power that you can monitor everybody's bank accounts, and then you put in laws like this Patriot Law, where now they want banks to report any cash transactions that I think are now as low as $3,000.
Wow, it used to be what, 10?
Yeah, it used to be 10, and now it's and not only that, but they before 9/11 they couldn't get that know your customer through.
Yeah,
and that was the whole concept there. That if you have any financial transactions that were out of normal profile, that your bank would rat you out.
Well, but Roger, if you're not doing anything wrong, so what? If people are squeaky clean or just not going over the line, it appears that aren't they after the real crooks and criminals of the world?
Well, it's an interesting question of who the real crooks and criminals are.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the power brokers and the people that are really pulling the strings in the world, and they're the ones that are mostly
the abusers of all of this.
Well,
huh?
the financial institutions, the people that actually have us as an example. Federal Reserve notes. I mean, they're non-interest-bearing debt notes. They don't actually have anything. They're not backed by gold or anything.
No, and really, they're not really part of the government, are they?
Well, no. The Federal Reserve is about as federal as Federal Express.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, in other words, if I owe you $100, then I give you a $100 Federal Reserve note, so that discharges a $100 debt that I have with you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really awash in debt notes because none of these notes themselves can actually be exchanged for gold or silver, and of course, that constitutionally, that's what our founding fathers called for. Everything had to be gold and silver. As a matter of fact, this is one of the reasons that I think the euro is doing so well, because I haven't been able to exactly find out what percentage, but I have heard that the euro is partially backed by gold.
Well, we used to be a long time ago, right?
Oh, we did, sure,
Yeah.
Tech, you could, another thing that FDR did was to get us off the gold standard, and then Nixon finished it off.
When we come back, I want to talk with you about biochips and implants in people, okay?
No, sure.
And a whole bunch more. Lots to talk about tonight. I'm George Noory with my guest Roger Tolces. We'll be back in a moment as we look into electronic surveillance of you.
From somewhere out there, this is Coast to Coast AM with George Noory.
And my guest, Roger Tolces, will be at a seminar, a conference in July. I want to give you some information on that, because if you are interested in this subject matter, you definitely want to attend this. July 12th and 13th. It's in Davis, California. July 12th, 13th, Davis, California. And there is a website for you to take a look at. It's controlledamerica.com, www.controlledamerica.com. Take a look at that. And again, his conference, he will be at July 12th and 13th in Davis, California. Hey, the website for Roger Tolces, by the way, is bugsweeps.com. It's linked up on coasttocoastam.com, so if you're up there, you've probably already taken a look at his website and some of the things he does in the field of electronic countermeasure security around the country. Roger, I know your clientele, it's proprietary, but can you relay a few stories for us on some of the things you've done and why they called you when they did? I'd love to hear a few of these.
Oh, yeah, okay. You know, by the way, I was going to say that if we're going to end up talking about these biochips, which is, I thought, where we're going to
Yeah, we're going to go there next.
That if they go to bugsweeps.com, if they click on the box on the main page that says electronic harassment, it'll take you to the pages that will not only show you the latest biochips, but will give you the links to the specifications. So, in other words, there's a NASA chip that's on there right now that you can click and go there and see all the specifications for that particular one. So if you go to the website, you can link up. And, of course, as we discussed these harassment things, all these pages have pictures associated with some of the things we're going to talk about.
Great.
Yeah, as far as the stories go, let me tell you a good story. There's this goes way back to around 1973 or so. I got a call from a private investigator over in Las Vegas. And I don't know whether you were going to Vegas back in the 70s, but at that time, the mob was running Las Vegas, and it was a terrific place. I mean, they took at the tables, but, the shows were free, and, darn near free.
Oh, well, that's true. And it was safe there, too.
Yeah, and the drinks were free, and the food was, terrific, and everything was great. And so anyway, this investigator over in Las Vegas, he didn't like any of the sweepers over there. So he called me up, and we made a contact. He said, come on over, because I want you to sweep this executive office in this major hotel on the Strip. So I said, hey, terrific, great. So I got there, and the nice thing about it, he was kind of an old-time investigator, and I was only about 25 years old.
Oh, you've been in this a long time.
Yeah, I started in 73. Jack Willis, my attorney at the time, had some criminal cases. I was doing other kinds of electronics. I was actually building recording studio equipment at the time.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, he had some criminal cases he was doing, and his defendants actually paid for my first equipment because they were worried about the phones being tapped at the law.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, getting back to Vegas, I arrived there and meet this old-time investigator, and he gave me some of the best advice I ever got. He said, you know something? I know you haven't done business with these kind of people before, he said, but this is what I want you to know. Just don't tell them any that you can do something that you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure that whatever you tell them you can do, he said, they're going to bring out a suitcase with money in it, and they're going to give you the money, whatever you want, but just make sure
just
that
deliver.
You can do it.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fine. So we come in the night before because I'm working on a Saturday when the office isn't that busy.
Right.
And so we check in Friday night. Had a girlfriend with me at the time. And they gave us a terrific room, a comp room, and a jacuzzi in it and all that.
Oh, man, you thought you were in heaven.
Oh, it was great. And they brought all my equipment up from the truck, and everything was sitting there, and I'm having some complimentary champagne, and I'm sitting there and saying to myself, I don't feel right about this room. After you've been in this business for a while, you get a feeling about a room, So I said, I'm going to check the room out. So I busted out all my equipment, and within 2 hours, I had myself 3 microphones and a couple other devices. I had about 4 devices totally. I had cut microphones out of the ventilators.
Oh, my gosh.
The whole room was just totally wired. So I didn't say anything about it, and the next morning the investigator comes over, and he takes me upstairs to meet the big guy, This is one of these guys from New York. And I go in there, and he holds his hand out to shake his hand with me. I had the bugs in my hand. I just put them right in his hand. And he looks down at him, and he starts laughing. He says, "You're good."
Ah, they were testing you, weren't they, Roger?
Well, the nice part about it is that the story spread around Vegas.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of work after that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but I've always taken this man's advice, and it has definitely been the way to go. You don't want to ever, in this business, tell people that you can do something you can't do.
My gosh. Yeah, and you've worked for all of them, haven't you?
I've worked for some of the most powerful people in America. Yeah.
You know where Jimmy Hoffa is, don't you?
Well, you know something?
I had to ask you that because I was the last reporter in Detroit to see him in 1975.
You were?
Yes, sir.
No kidding.
Absolutely.
No kidding. But I'll tell you one better, that my mom dated Jimmy Hoffa.
You're kidding.
Now, in New York City, my mom and her family owned some bars over there, and she actually went out on a date with him. She didn't care for him, from what I understand, and that was the only date, but she did go out with him. If you go on their website, though, there's a wonderful old article about Bernard Spindell.
Okay.
And he was a sweeper back in and he was Jimmy Hoffa's sweeper. And there's a wonderful Life magazine article that's in my info section there, and it was written back around 1968, and it's pictures of Bernard going out and placing bugs. We've got the whole article there. But anyway, he was the sweeper, and there's some very funny stories when you read Bernard Spindell's book about how he used to, bust all the federal bugs. They'd be wiring up the Hoffa, and he'd go around, and he'd also have monitoring equipment. So as the FBI kept surveillance on him, he was always monitoring the FBI communications. And Hoffa snuck him into his hotel room most of the time in laundry carts and things like that. And the whole time Hoffa's listening to the FBI, and you can hear everything, because they're chatting back and forth, they're eating donuts.
They rebugged him, huh?
He was cross-bugging the government. He was. And Spindell never wanted to cooperate with the government. Eventually, the government killed him.
You think they did just directly?
No, they imprisoned him and didn't allow him to have his heart medication.
And off he went.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's in his book. There is a book written about him, and the end isn't in the book, but a lot of the stories.
The stories you may have, Roger, huh?
Well, I do. I've got a lot of stories. Let me tell you one more story this is the power of bugging equipment. I had a friend of mine, and this is 20 years ago. I had a friend of mine that built these things, and he had a client that I introduced him to, and this guy was a big real estate guy. So he brought a briefcase into this bug building friend of mine. He said, "I want you to build a bug into my briefcase, a microphone transmitting system, and I want you to build me a little receiver that I can put in my pocket with a little earpiece." So my friend built him this thing. I think it charged him $1,500. So this guy took this bugged briefcase, and he went to New York City to close a deal on a $100 million building. And he went up into the real estate offices of the people that were selling the building in Manhattan. He sat down in their own meeting room, opened his briefcase, and he put an offer on the table for the building for $100 million. He said, "Gentlemen, that's my offer. I'm going to go down the hall, call my Los Angeles office. Why don't you talk the offer over and see if we've got a deal?" He goes down the hall, goes into the bathroom, gets in the bathroom stall, takes out the receiver, puts it in his ear, and he hears these guys say, "Well, let's counter with $125 million, but if he doesn't take it, let's go with $100."
I love it.
So the guy closes the deal for $100 million. He comes back 2 weeks later to see my friend. He tells my friend, "You saved me $25 million. And my friend says, "You know something? I didn't charge you enough for that suitcase."
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
That is a true story. $25 million for a $1,500 bug.
That is great. This equipment, Roger, must be incredible. Do they really have like a little tiny automatic fly with a little camera on it, or is that all James Bondy and stuff?
Well, the only thing I can tell you is this, and this is really interesting. If you look at all these pop-ups that are coming on the internet, every time you're on the internet, there's a pop-up for one of these small covert cameras.
Yeah.
They're actually pretty small, and they got little transmitters in them, and they're 2.4 gig, and they will transmit for a fair distance. It depends on how thick your walls are, but heck, they really will go some ways. The interesting thing is I've got a friend of mine that's in that business selling these things, and he is selling 16,000 units a month.
16,000?
One distributor selling these devices. Now consider that he's only one distributor. So that means there's hundreds of thousands of these devices that are going out into America every day.
Wow.
And a lot of them are being used by perverts. I mean, these people are putting them in bathrooms, and they're spying on neighbors. I mean,
my
have
God.
you seen the up-the-skirt cams and all the rest of this stuff?
Right.
People are putting up websites where they're putting these cameras in public bathrooms.
And they are really small, aren't they?
They are small, and you know something? At 2.4 gig, they are not easy to detect. I mean, I have a $32,000 surveillance receiver, and that does do a good job, but you don't want to get real far away from them.
And the naked eye probably would not find these things.
Well, if you go to my website, you'll see that they're already prepackaged in about 6 or 7 different things. They got them in radios, they got them in VCRs, they got them in exit signs, they got them in computer speakers, they got them in pencil sharpeners. You can buy these things prepackaged, ready to go.
Unbelievable. I'm going to go up to your website now and take a look at some of this stuff while we talk.
And you can link onto that one from the harassment page as well. But, let me tell you what the real big threat is.
And by the way, we've already linked up the Controlled America on your website on Coast to Coast.
Yeah, Mary Ann Stratton, who runs that, has helped a lot of people that are harassment victims. And actually, this is going to be a 2-day event where there's going to be some very, very good speakers there as well. And I'll be there with all my equipment. And over the couple of years that I have been there, I've met some terrific people, and I've actually learned a lot. I'm always learning something.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
In terms of the worst threat right now, let me just mention something real quick. The worst threat right now is bugs that are cell phone bugs.
Cell phone bugs. Okay. So how do they go in the cell phone?
Well, here's what they are. They are cell phones that have been modified. And the way these cell phones work is instead of the microphone being a normal microphone in a cell phone where it only picks up close proximity, these microphones are set up to pick up a whole room.
Okay.
So the way you would use this bug is I would go and know that your corporation is having a meeting that's going to have some very significant information.
Right.
I would either be a rat and bring the cell phone with me, or I would leave the cell phone in the room, the meeting room, as if somebody left it there.
Yes.
Put it in a corner. The way this device works is it will automatically dial a listening post. And if you at the listening post have a recording device, then you just record what the cell phone is transmitting, which is excellent quality of the room audio. And the way the cell phone is set up is that if it drops link, it will automatically dial up.
It comes back and finds you again.
It will come back to dial back the listening post where the recording device is. And so, and it will also go the other way. If you're at the listening post, you can dial the cell bug, and it won't ring. It will link, but it won't ring.
Is this corporate espionage? Is this big business now?
Oh, sure. If you're talking about a new advertising campaign or new product information or design development information, it's worth billions. As a matter of fact, I'm telling you, what I've had to tell my Fortune 500 people is that right now, you got to check the cell phones outside the meeting room. When you're going to have meetings that are going to have information that relates to these kind of significantly important strategies and plans, etc., you got to sit a secretary outside the meeting room, and the rule is everybody checks their cell phone, and the secretary puts labels on the cell phones. Mr. Jones's phone, Mr. Smith's phone, and she does nothing but answer cell phones the whole time that she's sitting outside the room. But there are no cell phones allowed inside meeting rooms with critical information anymore.
It's at a point, who do you trust?
Well, in the old days, they used to have me sit in an associated room with all my sweep equipment. We'd sit in there with a couple of spectrum analyzers, and we would just see if there were abnormal signals coming out of the room, and then we knew we had a rat or somebody had brought a transmitting device in.
Now, what do you do if your equipment registers that you've got that rat in that room? Do you go in there right away and catch him and get him out of there? Or what?
Well, that's generally the way it goes. At that point, we would sweep the bodies of the people that were in there and find out who's got it.
My gosh, he must be embarrassed. And then what happens to him?
Well, then some serious stuff comes down on somebody. Yeah.
Is it against the law to do that? I guess it is.
Yeah. Well, it all depends. Bugging normally has to do whether you have reasonable expectation of privacy. And if you're out in public, see, that's the reason they're able to get all the video cameras out in the public right now, is they come under reasonable expectation of privacy in the sense that you're not inside your home.
On the other hand, though, the cameras that are out there are also beneficial in that they sometimes catch kidnappings and things like that. So there is an upside to this Big Brother watching us, though not a big one.
Well, facial recognition to me is anytime you're asked to hand over your bio information, be it a fingerprint or a photograph, and they start making databases, which is really what they do.
Sure.
Or linking the cameras to databases of wanted people. To me, you have to remember that the founding fathers always thought that they never were thinking that you'd be able to take a camera with telephoto lenses that can go hundreds of yards and look at every wrinkle on your face, and then take an instantaneous photograph, and then run that through a computer that digitizes it and puts you in a database.
They couldn't even comprehend that.
No, but this is real. This is exactly what's happening. They're digitizing faces, and then they can just run that link into the driver's license database. This is one of the reasons that the feds did this law, this driver's license protection law, a couple of years ago, because
Sure.
it gave them access to all those databases.
Didn't they test a facial recognition equipment in Florida, and they arrested the wrong guy?
Yeah, that was the story on the season. Oh, that's right.
Some child payments, he was behind in his child support payments, but it wasn't the guy.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't think the technology is perfected, but the point is that nobody asked me permission to put me in the database. You see, that's the thing. If you're going to be in a database, then you really should be giving consent to do that.
Are they in the database? Those people who are putting us in it?
Probably as minimally as possible.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Well, generally, most of these people they're very savvy about things like offshore bank accounts and all that. I mean, look at Saddam Hussein. The guy probably has money all over the world. So.
By the way, you're good at surveillance. Why can't we find him?
Well, maybe it's not advantageous to do that at this point.
That could be.
You always have to look at the face of things.
And maybe we cut a deal.
It's hard to say. It's very hard to say. But the amazing part is that we're not finding any weapons of mass destruction, and that's very serious, because what you've done is you've taken a sovereign nation and you have destroyed it. Now, we may not have liked what this guy was, and nobody condones torturing your own people and that kind of thing. But where does it stop? In the sense of if you are a sovereign nation and you are considered a legitimate government, what gives the right of another government to just go in and just say you're out? And if it sets a precedent.
Sets a dangerous precedent.
And it does.
And, I would have, beginning, if they don't find any weapons of mass destruction, and Bush keeps saying that we will, then where are they? I want to know, when they said specifically that they had them, I want to know what proof they had to say that and where they were, because they've never come up with that. But I would have felt more comfortable if they said, this guy's a butcher, he's putting people in wood chippers, and we're not going to tolerate that anymore. To be more upfront like that, I think, is what you have to do.
Yeah, but of course, how many countries are doing that all around the world. So
most of them.
Then you're back to World Cop again.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. Look, next hour, let's talk about these chips in people. I mean, your stories are so fascinating. I could have talked about them all day. Your kind of equipment, is it getting smaller, too, because of technology?
It can. I don't like the new equipment because I don't like digitized equipment. I've been using analog equipment, and the thing about analog equipment, it has very finite resolution. When you start digitizing things, when you start breaking it into bits, then you start to get quantization errors and other kinds of distortions. And the bottom line in my business is wave pattern recognition.
Can they make equipment to circumvent your ability to find it?
Well, they thought they could, but so far they've failed so far. They've done some pretty slick things to try to beat me along the way. I must say, they've been very creative.
Who would be the biggest proponents of bugging, government or private people?
Both.
Really?
Yeah. The important thing is that we look at what's really happening. One of these things that we really need to talk about here is this chemical and biological this law that's been on the books here that allows the government to do bioweapons experiments on civilian people.
Okay, let's talk about that, too, when we come right back, all right? Roger Tolces, my guest. I'm George Noory. Get up to his website. Take a look at some of the things there. I'll be back in a moment. This is Coast to Coast AM. Roger Tolces, my guest, PI. I guess that's what you are, huh? The PI, private investigator. Did they give you those initials?
Well, yeah, they do on your license. It's a PI number, something, you know.
Can you carry a gun?
If I decided to have a firearms permit, I used to do it, but I just, got away from it.
Roger, a couple things. I want to talk about, there's so many things. The clock continues to tick here. We could go on for 20 hours here. But, of course, the chemical and biological rights to test, they have been doing that for a long time on us, some of it slowly becoming known. Do you see that as being an abuse that's going to continue?
Yeah, well, this is a really important issue. In let me see, it was 1997 or so, somebody brought this law to my attention, and basically what it is, it's a U.S. Code, Title 50, Chapter 32, Section 1520. And rather than just reading it, basically what it says is that the government and its associated agencies and subcontractors can do bioweapons testing on civilian populations.
Without us knowing about it.
With only a 30-day notice to anybody in authority in the area. Now, somebody brought this to my attention. I said, well, this can't be for real. Why would our legislators allow a piece of legislation to come through? Because, there are supposed to be our protectors, our representatives. Why would they ever let something like this go through? So what I did is I brought it to the attention of Senator Barbara Boxer, who is our California senator.
Right. and
she said, well, I said, well, I actually met with her. I said, why is this? What is this about? She said, well, I don't know. So she wrote a letter to the Department of Defense, which I've got a copy of their reply.
Wait a minute, she said, I don't know?
She said, I don't know. I'll check. So she went to the committee that handles this kind of stuff and had the committee head right to the Department of Defense and ask them, what is this for? So we get this letter back, and I've got a copy of it, and the letter's from some scientists at the Department of Defense say, oh, we don't do that. So then the good news was they rescinded the law. It got repealed.
Now, that's good. You probably had a lot to do with that.
Well, now, wait a second. In the 1998 Military Appropriations Bill, it reemerged again.
Oh, no.
Now, listen to the new version. I'm going to read you the new version.
Okay.
This is interesting. It says here, restrictions on human use of subjects for testing of chemical and biological agents. It says prohibited activities the Secretary of Defense cannot conduct directly or by contract any test experiment involving the use of a chemical agent or biological agent on a civilian population or any other testing of a chemical agent or biological agent on a human subject, with the exception of, and number 3 is, any law enforcement purpose.
Which could be any purpose.
Well, think about this for a second. They've got this new program called non-lethal weapons.
Uh-huh.
And the Black Ops and the DOD have been putting billions of dollars into developing not only weapons that can incapacitate people, like microwave energy beam weapons.
Right.
And I don't know whether you have read some of the reports that they've got this energy beam weapon online. As a matter of fact, I was at the website for, I think it was Popular Science, where actually they had one of the reporters stand at the U.S. Marine base where they're testing this thing. They've developed a 95 gigahertz heat ray, and basically it costs $40 million has been spent in developing the weapon. It's at this Air Force base, and it says that it gives an intense burning sensation that is similar to somebody holding a hot light bulb against your skin. And if you go to this website, this fellow describes that he volunteers to stand in the ray of this thing, maybe 100 or 500 feet away. I forget what
He's the human guinea pig here, huh?
Well, he said, well, let me just try it.
So he can write about it.
That's right. And so he took about 3 seconds of it, and he dove for the ground because it was so painful.
So intense.
And the amazing thing is that they call the system active denial technology. It's been in the works for 10 years at the Kirkland, New Mexico Air Force Base. So this weapon is online. It's an energy weapon, an energy beam weapon. And let's just look for a second. There's another document here I wanted to read that has to do with what they're doing with non-lethal weapon.
All right, and while you're looking for that, how big is this weapon? Is it like a rifle or what?
It's it says here that, and I think that on the ControlledAmerica.com website, when I went over there today, they got a picture of it. It basically is mounted on a small truck, and the dimensions are 3 meters by 3 meter dish antenna.
Okay, I see it right now. It looks like almost looks like a Humvee.
Yeah.
With this huge little thing on the top. Yeah. All right.
Now, if I don't know whether you studied some of the things that have happened in the past. There was an incident back in the 80s where there were women in England that were protesting outside an Air Force base over there, and I'm going to get you the name of that Air Force base, because they didn't want the cruise missiles, the nuclear weapons in England.
Right.
And the name of the location was Greenham Common. And these women were radiated with microwaves. That's the way they decided to put an end to their protesting at the gate over a period of time. And they radiated these people for some period of time, where they eventually all came down with cancer and other terrible things that happen to you when you get electromagnetically radiated. So it looks like, and that was in about 1984. So even though some of these things have been on the boards for a while, they are experimenting with them ongoing.
And though they say they're non-lethal, eventually they do become lethal.
Of course. Yeah, of course. This is interesting. This is the Department of Defense Directive, January 1, 1995, and it's a policy for non-lethal weapons. The thing I find really interesting about this particular document is that they describe who they're going to use them on, and they describe the people as being adversaries. They want to use them for crowd controls, neutralizing combatants, disable, disrupt military logistics, and disruption, da-da-da. Anyway, the important phraseology here is what they define as an adversary, and I should have that page here. It says here, interesting, the term adversary is used above in its broadest sense, including those who are not declared enemies, but who are engaged in activities we wish to stop.
Which could be almost anything.
Of course, yeah. You know, one of the things that we have in America is the ability to go to the streets and protest when we don't like what the government's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens if you go out into the street and decide to protest, and all of a sudden one of these devices show up and start to beam everybody, and that's the end of that.
And I would guess this thing is on some kind of rotating scanner type thing. It could hit a crowd of hundreds of meters wide. It just keeps going back and forth.
Well, it could. Yeah, it could.
They'll get to that point.
Many of the people that come to me, though, feel that they are guinea pigs in these covert experimentations.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, I have many clients that come to me and say that I'm being radiated. And one of the things that we do is we take our equipment to their locations and see what kind of radiation is present.
Now, are they in buildings? Where are they?
Many of them are in their own homes.
Okay. All right. And why would they say that? I mean, are these people anti-government? Are they well-known people? I mean,
most of them have some kind of conflict in their history with the government. Many of them are whistleblowers.
Okay, so there's a bona fide reason that they have been selected.
As far as normally when I go back into their past history, there's some kind of conflict that took place, or they were somebody that was in the know on something that was no longer, they were no longer being useful. Kind of like that fellow you were talking about last night. Remember the story that came about the individual's father who was involved with the Roswell?
Oh, the Roswell, that's right. And as he died in his room in a VA hospital, they wouldn't let his family in to see him. Yeah.
The symptoms, let me talk about the symptoms for these kind of exposure, because these people call me up with these symptoms: headaches, eye irritation, dizziness, nausea, skin rash, facial swelling, weakness, fatigue, pain in the joints or muscles, buzzing, ringing in the ears.
This is frightening stuff, Roger.
Skin numbness, abdominal pressure and pain, breathing difficulty, irregular heartbeat, balance problems, body or muscle spasms, convulsions, confusion, depression, difficulty in concentrating, seizures, sleep disturbances, memory difficulties. Some people will have a high white cell blood count, and other people will just plain be hearing voices. Now, on the hearing voices, if you head to my section that I've got on the website, which links over to microwave detection and remote mind control technology, I have the patent for That was granted in 1989 for microwave hearing.
How do I find that, by the way?
Well,
I'm on your website now.
Okay, are you on the front page of the website?
Front page.
Okay, if you go to the Microtel microwave receiver, you see there's the middle machine, which is a microwave unit.
It says Microtel.
Yeah, just click on that.
Click the machine?
Click on the
Okay, machine is there. Okay, so it opens up the microwave detection.
Yeah, now you're at the microwave detection, and if you go to the very bottom, there should be a link to the patent.
All right, you click the patent number, which is 4,000,008 something. All right, okay, I'm into it now. Hearing device, it says.
Why don't you just have a look, and that basically there is a patent for using a microwave energy beam to make people hear voices inside their heads. Now, that's a 1989 patent. And if you consider for a second that if that was going to be a non-lethal weapon that you were going to try to develop, how would you go about doing that? Would it just be adequate to try to get volunteers in prisons and things like that, or you're actually going to take it out to the streets and try to use it under Title 50, Chapter 32, Section 1528?
Which is what they would do.
So I've got many clients that feel that they are what's known as targeted individuals.
That's incredible.
And there's many of them. If you actually go to this conference that's coming up, you'll meet many of these people.
What kind of voices are they hearing, Roger?
Well, there are some people that hear voices like as an example, do you recall this woman down south where she was hearing voices from God to drown your kids, and she went out and drowned her kids?
Yeah.
Well, if you were conducting an experiment with somebody that doesn't know they're being experimented on, what would you consider to be a positive outcome of the experiment?
Something angelic, something religious.
Well, not so much that.
If you were the victim.
Yeah, but let's say that you and I were conducting covert experiments.
All right, we're doing the experimenting.
Yeah, we're going to radiate this person without them knowing it. We're going to put voices in their head that says drown your kids.
Sure.
Well, if the person drowns their kids in a period of time,
it's successful.
It's successful, and yet we never interfered in their lives directly.
Indirectly.
Indirectly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm dealing with a lot of people that are in that category.
And you go back and write one hell of a report that says, we convinced this person to do this horrible thing.
Well, I can write the report, but here, this is what the courts say. This is kind of interesting. This is a case that was out of Michigan. And the plaintiffs claim, and he was I guess he was in prison. He says the plaintiffs claim that prison officials implanted a mind control device in his head and have been using it to control his thoughts and actions. This is what the judge is saying. This is the final.
This is a ruling by the judge.
The judge says it must be dismissed. The court finds as a matter of law that intracranial thought control devices such as the plaintiff describes are far beyond the reach of currently available technology. In so ruling, the court fully understands that technology marches on and that mechanisms thought impossible in an earlier age are now common. However, unless and until a litigant can prove tangible or scientific evidence that shows the existence of a telepathic mind control device, or at least the technology to produce it, the court shall recognize no legal obligation to be gullible. So that is what people are up against if they try to take some of these activities into a court.
By the way, the woman who drowned her children,
yeah.
And I think there were 5 involved, if I recall.
Yeah.
Yates was their last name. Didn't he, the father, work for NASA?
It's possible. I'm just, I don't know.
I think he did. I
don't know that particular case has this kind of scenario underlying.
Yeah, I think he did, which is even more bizarre.
Yeah, all I know is that the technology works. Now, what I've been able to determine since then, because this is a 1989 patent, and we're like 13 years later.
Oh, technology has zoomed past that.
I've been able to determine that 3 people can stand in a room now, and a beam can be aimed at it, and one person will hear the voice, and the other ones won't.
It can be that precise.
It's almost like 3 people having a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the cell phones themselves are almost identical.
Right.
But there is something in the receptors, in the sense of the way the transmission beam is transmitted, such that one person that has the proper biocoding can hear it, and the other 2 can't. Now, I'm not completely sure yet. I mean, I've got some very interesting people that help me with this stuff, because it is an incredible puzzle.
Where would the equipment be, the originating equipment? How close does it have to be to the recipient?
It depends on the power level. If it's a truck like we're looking at there, it could be
out in the neighborhood somewhere.
Now you also have these Westcam mounts. There's a company called Westcam, and they can put these on aircraft and they can put them on helicopters. And the Westcam mounts are guided by a GPS. So if I put the GPS coordinates of where your chair is right now,
right,
I can have an airplane flying anywhere in the sky over you, but yet the beam will be continuously focused. It's the same thing that the helicopters use to link their microwave video links to the receptor site as they're flying around.
Is this a dumbing down process? Is that what they're trying to do?
Well, no. What they're trying to do is, let's put it this way. What happens if, as an example, they're building this huge matrix of cell sites? There's cell sites everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a matrix. If you know the layout of cell sites.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. What happens if you could, in an event like a Rodney King kind of an event, where you had a general uprising,
mm-hmm.
what happens if you could take those transmission systems and switch them on into frequencies that would be mentally debilitating
to people? They'd all collapse to the ground or something.
They would all just become disoriented.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read you the list of effects, of physical effects. What happens if I could, transmit frequencies that would cause those kind of difficulties to come on you all of a sudden?
One would say a few years ago that you were nuts. I couldn't say that anymore. Yeah. You may be absolutely right.
Well, something. If you go to meetings like this and you also deal with people that are having these problems, and I see it over and over. And the interesting part is that they're all telling a similar story. And then they're all in proximity of some kind of electro field source.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, one of the breakthrough papers that has taken place recently, and you can get this on the net, and it's a March 2000 paper, is called the Psychological and Environmental Effects of Non-Ionizing Electromagnetic Radiation, a Final Study. This came out of Europe. And what they're saying here is that originally the limits that were set for human health on radiation, especially microwave, were set on thermal bases in the sense that if it didn't burn your skin, well, then obviously it's not dangerous. And of course, they set these levels with the military, with people that are working on radar antennas and things like that. But what they're finding out inside this study is that the human body is an electrical biosystem, and then if you start putting extraneous fields, electrical fields into people's bioelectrical system, you will disrupt not only their mental capacities, but also their brain's ability at controlling the rest of their body.
Body functions, everything goes.
Everything. And you're talking about the link between the brain and every organ that secretes all these chemical balances that are necessary. So this paper is a breakthrough paper in the sense that they're showing that the dangerous levels of radiation are such that these levels have to be really lowered down considerably, and especially for people that are anywhere near cell sites or anywhere near, a lot of these people that I'm dealing with. Some of these people believe that they are a guinea pig, and other people I find that are just in near proximity of radiation transmission equipment. There are people who happen to be in the line of sight of T1 link, microwave links, or cell sites, or power lines.
Well, who's doing it, Roger? Government or a superpower?
Well, as far as the non-lethal weapons, that's a DOD activity. But this is an interesting comment here. There was somewhere not so long ago, somebody said then they were talking about this development of non-lethal weapons. He said,
right. Hold that thought. We're going to take this quick break. We'll be right back and answer that question then. Who you think? Who's doing it? Because that is very important. I'm George Noory. Back in a moment. Yes, we'll still get into these biochips because they're going to implant all of us one day. We've got to get to the bottom of this one, too. Welcome back to Coast. I'm George Noory. Roger Tolces, my guest. His website, bugsweeps.com, which is already linked up on coasttocoastam.com. Also, the conference that he is going to attend on July 12th through the 13th is there as well, if you want to take a look at that. That is in Davis, California. Roger, we were talking about who is conducting these things on us. We've always heard about shadow government, a group above government. Could it be them?
Well, think of the amount of money that's involved with this. As I mentioned before, what was the dollar figure on just that one particular energy beam weapon? I think it was $40 million. Yeah, it was $40
million, which is a drop in the bucket for them.
Yeah, I know, but that's just one little toy, right?
Yeah.
Where we left off, and I just wanted to put this in the hopper for consideration as well. This is a document that I got, and this individual said this. He said, these weapons, and he's referring to the non-lethal weapons, were recently transferred from the Department of Defense over to the Department of Justice because there are several international treaties that specifically limit or exclude weapons of this nature for being used in international warfare.
That's weird.
Well,
so use them against us, but not in war.
Well, let's tie this in with the law at this time. Title 50, Chapter 32, 1520A says restrictions against human subjects, says they can, with the exception of any law enforcement purpose.
Which could be so vague.
Under the Department of Justice, right?
Right.
Because law enforcement isn't under the military.
Not yet, anyway.
Well, yeah, there is an element of crossover. I've been trying to figure out about this. A Waco was a wake-up because when you're flying helicopters, attack helicopters, and you're using tanks to destroy a church, that's certainly a wake-up call for America. Though I think most people are still sleeping through that one.
Yeah, that was a tough time for us.
And, of course, you might remember during that siege that they were beaming things at him. Some of it was music. Some of it was, I forget exactly what they were, but they brought power speakers out there, and for days on end they were beaming things at that location. Now, obviously, if they had this monster truck that we were looking at here,
somebody would have seen that.
Well, they certainly weren't worried about tanks, and they weren't worried about helicopters. So why would they be worried about that?
That's true.
But they may have chosen to use that because it would have been, in their view, perhaps more humane than the end result. But that whole thing ended up being a really.
But anyway, your thoughts though on just who might be doing this to us?
Well, I think basically we're talking here about who's developing non-lethal weapons. Where does the money come from, and actually who's in possession?
It could be black ops.
Well, of course. I think that black budgets are financing, and we haven't even discussed at this time satellite tracking using biochips because that's the next thing that's coming.
Which is what we've got to talk about.
Orbiting satellites are going to communicate with the chip in your body, and in every instant you're going to be known in terms of every location that you...
and let me ask you this. Not only will they be able to monitor you, will they also be able to disable you with this chip?
I don't think the capability is there yet, though I have had people that tell me that it is.
Just shut you right down. Let's get him. Let's get Roger Tolces. Let's get George Noory. Let's beam it up to the old computer and shut them down. Yeah. Boom.
Yeah, but the frightening thing that I can tell you is I've had people come to me and they've got chips and they don't know how they got them.
What do you mean they don't know how they got them?
They don't know how they got them. They have missing time. They have missing time in either that or they went in for surgery somewhere.
Which makes you wonder about the alien implant situation, whether there's some kind of covert operation that was being done years ago by government and people thought they were aliens. Who knows?
I don't know much about alien implants. All I can tell you is that I have checked some people. I've been able to detect the chips. And in one particular case, the man showed me how they put the chip into his body, which was interesting. Because, now they've got this technology where they use an MRI. As an example, let's say that you have a vein up in your neck that has become clogged. And they're able to go up through, they make a little incision in your leg, and they put a stent on a long
catheter,
and they run it up past your heart, and they put it up in your neck. and the only thing that's cut open is this little small area of your vein.
Right.
So this particular individual, one that does have a chip that I have detected, he knows that he ended up having this particular cut and about 8 or 10 hours missing time, and that's how he figures he got his.
Now, who is this kind of individual? I mean, obviously they want to monitor this guy.
Yeah, he definitely did have a clouded background. I really don't want to get too deep into it.
No, I understand. And what do you see as the main purpose for these biochip implants?
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that's linked on the page there is I put the patent that was granted for the GPS tracking bioimplant, and that's United States patent to Gargancho. The link's there for it, and it's called the Personal Tracking Recovery System. Apparatus for tracking and recovering humans utilizes an implantable transceiver incorporating a power supply, and basically this is the patent for the tracking chip.
And it's going to happen. It's happening now. They've experimented. Do you think it'll become law where every newborn baby's going to have to get one?
Well, I think what they're going to do is they're going to sell it to the people saying, hey, we got a lot of people stealing babies.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're going to take care of this. We're going to
know where your baby is immediately.
Know where your baby is at all times, and it's going to be terrific. You're going to love it. And you'll never lose your child.
And that's a pretty darn good inducement for a parent to get this chip.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I would do it. Just thinking about it, I would say, oh, my gosh, yes, got to do this.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the Digital Angel Verichip was some of the first people out of Florida to put this together.
Mm-hmm.
They implanted some people. If you run some keywords, one terrific keyword to run is biotelemetry. If you keyword that into Google,
mm-hmm.
or you put in microarray, there's a company called Gentex that makes a microarray, implantable transponder, neurochips, neuroimplants. These are all keywords that will take you to companies that are working on that. And then, of course, there's also companies that are working on neuro interfaces.
Are they getting government contracts?
I'm sure.
Amazing.
But, the people in the Matrix, you notice that little interconnect that they've got in the back of their head?
Uh-huh.
That's another direction. And I think that's another cell along the way is going to be, once we're able to interface with your brain, we're going to give you the power to do things mentally that you haven't done before.
Absolutely.
And that may be another way it goes. But there is an interesting law here that I wanted to go over, which is pretty interesting. And that is that on these implants, the government put a law on in 1990 called the Safe Medical Devices Act. And it requires USA manufacturers of implants and medical devices to adopt a method for identifying and tracking their product permanently implanted in humans.
Now, were they thinking at the time of like a heart pacer or something like that?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And so what they've done in breast implants and pacemakers and replacement heart valves is now they put chips, and they're microchips, so that you take a scanner and you scan.
Right. Okay.
So they're already,
and the ID shows up.
You're already getting chips. And you don't even know it.
You don't even know it.
Yeah, I can imagine that, getting a breast implant, and you got a couple of microchips.
We know where she is.
Well, I'll tell you. Anyway, there also is they're also doing this thing to make chips that will give biotelemetry for people that are not well. The whole idea is you put the chip in, and the chip will then ongoing monitor.
If you got like Alzheimer's disease, you wander away somewhere, they're going to find you.
Well, that also that's already online.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm talking about here is this new version biochip implant, which you can see in the picture there with the tweezers near it, and that goes to the NASA website. What that thing will do is they'll put that in a person. And it will monitor that person's bio. All their temperature and their heartbeat and all the rest of these things. And then that would become a downloadable memory so that, let's say you had medical problems, you could go to your medical office once every week and they download it, and it would give them all the charts and information about your bio specifications.
Well, that sounds like a good thing, though. Right.
Well, very well may be, and that's another reason people may be getting them is you get sick and you get old. They'll say, well, here's the next thing that you need to do. We need to put this in here, and that becomes an interface for them to have ongoing monitoring. They do that now, with people that have irregular heartbeats, they will put a monitor around their belt that they'll walk around with for a couple of days to try to catch those periods where their heart's skipping, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that technology, so that's another direction.
Don't you see the day coming where we'll all have to have implants just to be able to buy things? You know, you take your arm and just run it over a scanner, and we know who you are, and your bank account is debited, and you get your groceries, and out of the store you go.
You know, I think that's how a lot of people try to scare us on that, and that is scary. But I think it's really going to come the other way. I think it's going to come. They're going to sell it like, well, your health isn't good enough. We need to put this in to aid your health, or it becomes that you can't compete at work with the guys that got the smart chip interfaces with their brains. You got to get one. It's going to come in that new car salesman kind of thing.
What if people refuse, Roger? What if they say, I ain't going to get one?
Well, you know something, it's going to be like cell phones. It's going to be like cell phones. They're not going to worry about it.
Would you get one?
No, not at this point. I certainly would not.
No, what did you qualified that? You said at this point. What does that mean?
Well, I don't know. If, as an example, they gave me a life or death situation where, you know, now you can't live without this machine, like similar to a pacemaker. If they said that, we can extend your life 5-10 years because of a pacemaker, obviously we'd go forward and get it, right?
Yeah, of course. Most people would.
If they got a pacemaker down to a biochip size, I guess I'd have to sign on.
Well, that's true. That's true. But do you think their motives then could be suspect? Or is there any good cause here? Is there any humanity involved in any of this?
Well, I think in the sense that these biochips, yes. But when you're talking about pure tracking chips, which is the kind of stuff that we're running into now, we're running into people that are getting tracking chips and they don't know where they came from.
They can't remember.
They don't know.
That's amazing.
They don't know where they came from.
I mean, did they ever felt like they were stung, almost like a bee hit them? Maybe they got shot at from a distance or something.
No, these things would have to be put in with one of these stents or injected at the local site. So somebody would either have to be under anesthetic going for another surgery, or they lost time.
And they're really small, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they're the size of a grain of rice.
Okay, I'm on your website, so get me to one of these biochips. How do I find it?
Okay, you should be down at you should be at the harassment section. Are you in the harassment?
No, I'm still on the front page.
Okay, then there's a box there that's vibrating that says electronic harassment about the middle of the page.
Middle of the page.
Vibrating box.
Okay,
just
click that.
Click on that.
All right, there I am. I'm in there now.
Okay, now you're in the harassment section?
Yep.
Okay, then go on down till you see the biochip. And there is a biochip with a little pair of tweezers.
Okay, they look like little maggots.
Yeah, that's a little one. Now, if you click to the right, you see where it says the link there, nasatech.com, briefs?
Hold on here. Do I click to the right on a picture?
You click to the URL that says under, it's the next to it, it says the newest version of a biochip implant for more information.
Oh, it says the NASA.com briefs, that thing?
Yeah.
Okay, click that.
Yeah, that'll take you to the specifications of this thing and their intent on it.
All right, I'm into that now. Okay.
What they're doing with that is
look how little that thing is.
Yeah, they're going to implant those in children. That's their first.
Look at the chip. Look how small it is.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
God. Now, this is nanotechnology.
Yeah.
All the way.
Yeah. And one of these other links also has to do with there's another company here that's making neurochip interfaces. What they're attempting to do is to get these chips to integrate and lock in to an existing neurosystem, so that what they can do is they can put an interface in, and that's another way that they're going to get this done. Is they're going to say, well, we're going to link you to your home computer.
What powers this chip, by the way?
If you look at the patent discusses that muscular energy is the powering system for it. This particular one from NASA, I think, has a battery-powered system. But if you look at the patent on the GPS link, which I gave you there,
yeah, earlier,
that one will take you into the patent, and the patent discusses it as being power for a remote-activated receiver is generated electromechanically through the movement of body muscle.
Unbelievable. The body does it.
Yeah. Well, that's why, that's why I like to put together a website like this. It actually goes to real data, real patents. We're not talking about pie-in-the-sky stuff here. We're talking about the United States government gave these people a patent for these things. Well, if the government didn't think it could be done, then they really shouldn't have issued a patent.
Is this happening worldwide?
I'm sure. Several of the people that have these chips have come down from Canada.
I mean, the Japanese must be all over this stuff.
Well, I'm sure it's worldwide.
Who do you think the leader is in this kind of technology?
Hard to say. I don't know. But I'm almost sure that the majority of the money is being spent by the Black Ops.
Well, of everything you have worked with in your career as a private investigator specializing in electronic countermeasures, what do you see as the biggest danger to all of us? These chips? Something else?
Well, I thought certainly these chips are, I don't even carry a cell phone. You know why?
Why?
Because I don't want to be tracked. I don't want them to come back months later saying you were here, there, and there, and there. You see, a cell phone doesn't have to be on.
Of course, you're in that kind of business where you don't want to be found.
Well, it's almost like, did you ever see the movie Enemy of the State?
What was it about? Probably did.
It was about a guy who got a little bit got too far into intelligence, and they decided to start tracking him down. But anyway, the point is that they found out that he was at a phone booth, and that was about an hour later. They found out he was a phone booth. They went to the satellite system, and they asked the satellites to go back for the past hour and play back everything that took place within their view.
Was this with Kevin Costner?
No, it was not. It was with a black actor.
Okay. Denzel Washington.
No, it wasn't. It was
Will Smith.
Will Smith, right?
Yeah.
Right, that's it. Matter of fact, a friend of mine did a lot of the consulting on this movie.
Okay.
Anyway, to make a long story short, they went back into the database of the satellites and traced where his car went. And of course, they're doing the same thing now with these GPS tracking units. It's unbelievable. This is a big controversy as well. The police put a GPS tracking unit on a bottom of a guy's car up in Washington, and they found that he went and did something. I forget what kind of crime he did, but they went and arrested him. And then the defense attorney said, well, you guys didn't have a warrant to put a GPS tracking device on his car. And so that's a big issue up there now, which is probably going to go up to the Supreme Court. That can you put a tracking device on somebody's car without
a warrant?
Without a warrant. And up in the state of Washington is saying, yeah.
Well, why don't they just go get the warrant? Won't they make it easier?
Well, I guess what they're saying is that why should we need a warrant to track a car? In the old days they did when they had bumper beepers, which was the prior way that they did it. They had, actual transmitting beeping systems, and they'd follow behind with a car with 4 antennas, and they would actually track it electronically. Now, they don't even have to be there, and they can call the GPS unit by cell phone and ask it where it is.
Unbelievable.
Are you familiar with how those work?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. I got a friend of mine named Mike Adler. He moves through the dark shadows, and he gives me a lot of terrific information. The guy's an amazing contact.
All right, we'll be back. We'll talk with you more about some of those shadows. And yes, I tell you what, we'll open up the phone lines now, too. I've gotten more emails for Roger Tolces than just about anybody I've ever had on. So we'll give you an opportunity to chat with him as well. I'm George Noory. Back in a moment. Your phone calls, more questions. Roger, how far will you go in this country to test and to look for electronics eavesdropping devices and other measures? Will you go all over the place, or do you restrict yourself?
Well, I can't get on aircraft anymore because of the problems with them. Not only you show up with this kind of equipment, they go crazy.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So no, but we did go to Texas to work for a very wealthy lady that was being electronically harassed, and she had a mansion, and it was pretty interesting because someone had previously been there, and they had her coat all her walls with copper, kind of a copper foil, but kind of a heavy copper foil. I mean, not only were the walls covered, but the floors as well. They took up the carpets. The whole room was copper foil, top to bottom. She was being radiated to a degree where that was... so anyway, this individual that advised her to do that... kind of didn't complete it. And we went in there and I ran some tests on it. It was educational because I was curious to see how well copper foil did. And unfortunately, at the microwave frequencies, it made no difference at all.
Doesn't stop it at all, does it?
No, I even went out and bought a ground rod because it wasn't grounded. So I went down to the hardware store and got a 6-foot ground rod and drove it in and got copper wire and grounded the whole room because I thought that might be the problem. But It did knock down the 60 cycle stuff, lower frequency things, but it didn't do anything. So, but we do have things that we do. In other words, we use some material called EchoSorb.
EchoSorb, what is that?
It's ECCOSORB, and if you go into the internet, you can run that through Google and come up with the company. It is a microwave-absorbing material. It's used mostly by the military, and they put it on parts of antennas where they don't want echoes.
Is it rubber, plastic? What is it?
Yeah, it's a foam. It's about a 1 foot by 1 foot, 2 foot by 2 foot square foam, about 2 inches thick. And it will knock the signal down, in some cases, 60 dB, which is a considerable amount of absorption. So we have clients of ours that that can't live other places, that will actually build kind of like a coffin
for themselves
to sleep in, so that they can stop the harassment while they're at least sleeping.
Now, how many of these people do you think are just, they're making it up? They just think that this is happening to them.
Yeah. Well, you know something? I'm not sure, but I can tell you that I see such a consistency in the symptoms, the stories, the backgrounds, that and you say your email's going crazy.
Oh yeah.
Well, just try to get a feel for how many people are targeted individuals. I mean, it could be thousands and thousands.
Let's go to the phones.
And over the world as well.
Wildcard line, welcome to Coast to Coast. You're on the air with Roger Tolces. Hi there.
Hi. You just mentioned, I don't know if it works the same with aluminum foil, but other guests on the show have said to put aluminum foil on your doors and windows as protection for mind control, I think the HARP. And I was wondering if that would work. And also I was wondering if since we have this 24/7 satellites all over the world, why didn't we detect where all the weapons are? And also why we haven't found more money of the Islamic terrorists, since they can track everything we do.
Well, have they? I'll tell you the one thing I haven't also heard, Roger. Remember after 9/11, they said someone, some group, something sold short stock in like American Airlines and insurance companies and things like that. Remember that story?
I do.
How come we never heard anything else?
Because there might have been somebody in power.
Unbelievable.
Well, and also if somebody was in the know, they don't want anybody to know that. So, hopefully, eventually, someday, the truth will come out, on all this stuff.
I mean, we didn't hear anything about who sold short all that stuff.
I just don't like the whole 9/11 thing. There's something about it to me that just doesn't.
Can't quite put your finger on it.
It's the story is yet to be told, but there's something not right about it. And the thing that really bugs me is this Patriot bill was ready to go. I think it's 360 pages or more of legislation that got fast-tracked through. Most legislators never read it. It got fast-tracked through because of these two buildings coming down.
Well, that's true.
And which crushed a lot of the freedoms of our country. And this document was ready to go.
Well, you know what? Let's hope we do get to the full bottom of what this was. But anyway, what about aluminum foil? Some people use that.
My guess is it's not going to be any better than this expensive copper stuff, that it's not going to help at the higher frequencies. It's probably just going to, help you at the low stuff. But if you're really getting harassed with microwaves, then the only thing that I've seen that's kind of bright is there's this fellow out of New York named John Mecca, and he makes a kind of a low-power jammer that you wear around your neck. It's like a little electronic device, and you wear it kind of like a medallion, but it's a little bit thicker than that.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody showed it to me that bought one. I said, well, gee, this is interesting. I took it and put it in my shop, and sure enough, the thing does make wideband noise. I mean, all the way up through the gigahertz range. It was really kind of amazing. I was kind of amazed, because this lady was saying, when I turn this thing on at night, I put it by my head at night, I get relief. I'm able to jam these microwaves out, and I am able to get rest. So, and if anybody wants to contact them, they can email me, and I'll put you in touch with them. And all I can say is I put the unit on the bench, and it did make wideband noise. And it's, such low power that it's not going to interfere with other things as long as you keep it close to yourself.
I get a lot of phone calls and emails from people who hear around the country a very low humming sound coming from underground.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea what that could be? I think somebody's building something, to tell you the truth.
Well, you can make people hear whatever you want with microwaves. That's the thing about microwave sound is I can make you hear anything you want. I can make you hear voices. I can make you hear waterfalls. You name it. As long as I'm transmitting that content, that's what you're getting. The other symptoms you may notice about people that are being radiated with microwaves is that their body tends to vibrate. Their beds vibrate, and their sense of things is that things are moving around them. And of course, their muscles are twitching based on the radiation.
Does everybody have a different frequency?
I think so, in a sense that we're all basically similar in nature, but then there's this finite biofrequency that we have. Each one of us, like I was saying before, I think that they've developed a way to make one person hear the message and two people not, because they've been able to figure a way to code the biosignal for your bioreceiver.
East of the Rockies, welcome to Coast. Your turn. Hi.
Hi, this is Corwin in Austin, Texas. How you doing?
Hi, Corwin.
George?
Fine, thank you.
Wanted to tell you about a friend of mine who's been a victim of electronic harassment that I've known of since I've known this person for about 5 years.
What happened to him?
Well, little background is his friend used to work for Lockheed Missiles in Space on space debris.
Okay.
And basically what's been going on, we've been having the voices in the head and bouts of emotion, just out of nowhere, like sudden fits of anger or bouts of depression or crying or...
Even when you're with him, you'll see him just break right down?
Yes. And also like swelling on the face, just their lips will they'll look like Mick Jagger.
Why do you think they'd be after him?
Possibly because this friend worked on some stuff that nobody's supposed to know about.
What do you think, Roger?
I think he's in the program.
Well.
And one more thing I wanted to mention as far as list of symptoms are concerned.
Yes, sir.
Thyroid dropout.
Thyroid dropout.
Dropout of the thyroid gland, more specifically the thyroid production.
So what does a person like his friend Roger do to combat this?
Well, a lot of people leave the country and head for the wide open spaces. But if you actually have to stay contained, then you better start looking at EchoSorb or some kind of jamming device or some kind of countermeasure.
How are they beaming to him? How does that work?
I don't know. Basically, what we would do in his instant was we would go to his location with our equipment and determine the nature of the wave, the source of the wave, and make some kind of finding in that way.
I assume you would get that if they're beaming pretty quickly.
That's right. If it's operating, we will get it. That's what we travel in a very covert manner, so that most people don't know that we're there.
West of the Rockies, welcome to Coast. You're on the air with Roger Tolces. Hi there.
Hi, George and Roger.
Yes.
I'd like to ask Roger this. You discussed microwaves that can be beamed at a person to make them hear voices. With current technology, would this be exact, dictated wording, or would the victim be put into a general auditory hallucinatory state and come up with their own crazy topics and words?
Good question. Most of the people that I have talked to, because one of the things I really want to know when I interview people is what are the voices telling? First of all, how many voices do you have? Do they have personalities? Do they have names? And what are the voices telling you to do? Because one of the really interesting things that I'm looking at is what is the voice telling you to do? Because if they are in the program and they're supposed to have some kind of outcome, if they're a successful guinea pig, we're interested in knowing what the voices tell them to do. In some cases, the voices tell them to kill themselves.
I see. My goodness.
And they just keep beaming that. Kill yourself. Kill yourself.
Yeah. Or you wonder about Columbine kind of events as well. So it's hard for me to say. I'm not a psychologist, and I don't profess to understand that aspect of it. I'm basically a guy that goes with equipment and tries to figure out how all these things work. And it's a gigantic puzzle. It's a very fascinating, complex puzzle because you've got the people unleashing technology that literally billions of dollars have been put into, and here you're on the receiving end of it trying to decode it.
I'll tell you what, though, sounds like, Roger, some people are playing with some pretty dangerous toys, aren't they?
Well, this is a serious world. Don't kid yourself. And the stakes are high, and the very rich plan to stay very rich and plan to be in control of these things.
Next up, first-time caller. Welcome to Coast. You're on the air. Hi there. Hello.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm not usually up this late. The cat's staring at me. I've really enjoyed this program. That's why I'm up so late. As far as Mr. Tolces'
Sure.
investigative work,
we got to figure out a way.
Very interesting. I didn't think anyone was paying that much attention to it, but I hear about it all the time. I had a few thoughts. There was a program I watched a few years back that isn't on any longer. It was with the Office of Science and Investigative Research, where they actually built a type sensor that they could wear around the ear, and we're going to manufacture this sensor where it would scramble the human thoughts. And when I was hearing Mr. Tolces talk, I thought, well, if you had a sensor like that, maybe that would block them from hearing any type of thoughts. Whether this is authentic or not, I'm not sure. I think the program was called PSI Factor. And another thought I had was, I can remember almost 20 years ago when a few of our senators went over to Siberia, the so-called 30-story transmitter, 10-story receiver, I want to say weapons, but devices that were supposed to be used in deep outer space. Could they somehow be being used now to focus anywhere in the world? I mean, this is a problem that's worldwide, I know.
What do we know about this high electronic weaponry, Roger? Has anything been used? I mean, they were supposed to use this kind of smart bomb in Iraq, which would have destroyed all their microwave equipment. It was that high electronic microwave bomb. I don't think they used that.
High electronic pulse. Yeah, I don't think they would either, because it probably would toast their own gear. So, I don't think that they've quite figured out how to shelter their own equipment.
I don't think it's ready yet.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. But then again, I think the satellite thing, though, there's some very deep stuff coming with satellites. Like I said, they're already the NSA is already intercepting all kinds of communications with satellites. They know people's location. Your cell phone does not have to be in operation for the cell site to know where you've been. This is what people don't understand.
You mean it still reads it even when it's not on?
Every time you change cell site locations, there's a handshake that takes place. Your phone goes into the new area and says, "Hi, I'm here." And the cell site says, "Well, who are you?" And I'm so-and-so and so-and-so.
Even when it's off?
You have to pull the batteries out. That's the only safe way that I could say that.
Really?
Yeah. So my point is that you ride around with your cell phone for one solid month, and they'll go back and tell you everywhere you've been. And I'm saying that you never use the cell phone.
That's incredible.
Well, yeah, it is incredible. The other thing we got to talk about is brain mapping. You know anything about brain mapping?
Now, what the heck is that?
That's where they put you into an MRI, and they look at the amount of oxygen in different areas of your brain, and by showing you pictures of different things, they turn it into a rather complex lie detector.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is a new thing that's coming, and this is where we also could be in trouble with a new level of lie detector by seeing what areas of the brain...
Intrusion again, you mean?
Well, it's just what areas of the brain get stimulated when you look at certain things that they're going to show you.
So then they'll know what to do with that portion of the brain if they want to de-stimulate you, I guess.
Well,
stimulate you.
Yeah, that could be an event also, but this is more like a truth machine.
Huh. To make you tell the truth?
No, just to see your reaction to things that they want to know. As an example, let's say there's a crime scene. You say you didn't do it. Well, they show you pictures of the crime scene, and all of a sudden those areas of your brain that get excited when stuff's really going wrong starts lighting the machine up. That's what's happening as well. And that's,
well, is that admissible? I mean, lie detectors are not.
No, but, obviously we're not talking about court action. We're talking about interrogation and that kind of thing.
Well, that's true, too. Let's go to our wild card line. Welcome to Coast. You are on the air. Hi there.
Hi, how are we doing tonight?
We're doing great, thanks.
I've just been looking at a lot of things between Edgar Casey and also some things from Nostradamus and things of that nature and what's going on today. I think a lot of this with the Patriot Act and some of the things your guests are talking about are preparing this country for martial law.
You may be absolutely right.
I think that...
You may be absolutely right.
I think our government already knows there's a comet headed this way, and they're trying to take precautions to keep the country from going into chaos, whether for good or bad.
Well, I don't know. Roger, if you've listened to Coast, you know that there's always talk about the possibility of us getting hit by an asteroid. There had been talk of a extra planet in the solar system that was supposed to wipe us out in May, and it did not happen, of course. But the caller may be right on the button in that a lot of this could be done for martial law or control whenever they think they need to do it.
Well, this suspension of habeas corpus relating to these people, that these U.S. citizens that they put in isolation relating to 9/11. They just took these U.S. citizens and threw them inside these detention cells, isolated them, and didn't give them due process, and said, "Oh yeah, it's in the Patriot Bill. No more habeas corpus. No more."
I got it, but I tell you, it's a fine line between security, real security, and an invasion of our rights.
Yeah.
It's a tough call. It really is. Stay with us. Roger Tolces is my guest. I'm George Noory. We'll be back with more of your phone calls right here on Coast to Coast AM. Roger, would you be more concerned with law enforcement, local law enforcement having these powers, or big government?
I'm concerned with anybody having
all of them.
Sure.
All of them. That's what I thought.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's go to the phones. Let's go to, man, the clock is ticking. Let's go to our first-time caller line. You're on Coast to Coast with Roger Tolces. Hi there.
Hi. I just had a question. In the wake of 9/11, with all these private companies just wanting to make money and securing the country, with all this technology available with satellite tracking and being able to follow people, why is there still an FBI top 10 list? Why do we still have DC snipers and Eric Rudolph being able to hide out for so long?
All right, that's kind of an interesting question. Why do we have that top 10 list? How come Rudolph could hide for so many years, Roger? How come we can't find him?
The guy was living under a tree in the middle of the woods somewhere. I mean, that's about exactly where you'd have to be to stay out of the surveillance, using no phones, using no communication, not physically going anywhere, and probably was wearing disguises. I mean, but the point is they eventually got him, right?
Are our satellites so strong that you could literally key in on something anywhere and spot whatever you're looking for?
Yeah, I think so.
By coordinates, or how do they do that?
Yeah, certainly by coordinates. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to our wild card line. Welcome to Coast to Coast. You are on the air. Hi there.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hey, I basically just having a lot of personal involvement with these programs. This stuff started kind of like coming down on me, and it's interesting that the guest is calling everything harassment, and I want him to expand on harassment, because generally if a person is being harassed, they're aware of some aspect. They're being, if you will, if I can use my words, tormented in some way. So I'm a little nervous because I've been through a lot, and I'm going out on a limb here. I know all about this stuff. I've been through it for years. It's insidious. They do not leave you alone. And the problem is, once you figure it out, they can't leave you alone because you're a threat. But when he talks about harassment versus listening or surveillance that is supposedly undetected, but as he probably knows, they let you know that they are watching, monitoring you everywhere you are, in your car, at work, in your home, and that is where the harassment comes in. And I was wondering if he could expand on that.
Okay. Can I ask, and let me ask you one question. Do you want to share with us why they're after you? I'm curious. You don't have to tell us if you don't want to.
I could go into more, nothing like working for the military, anything like that. I think that I was in the wrong place, the wrong time.
All right.
It involved, some narcotics activity.
Aha.
Okay.
All right.
And they kind of picked me, not thinking that I would ever come as far as I have. And I think I'm a surprise to them, but it's ugly. If my friends are on me long enough, they go after them. And I know I sound like, but it's amazing. I appreciate you so much for your show. You have no idea. My family and friends have almost shunned me off. And not that I'm getting some validation here, and you're doing really good work. And you and I both know what the real story is here.
Okay, I'll let you listen on the radio. Of course, everybody makes a mistake in their lives, and the whole thing about mistakes, Roger, is to learn from them so you don't make them again. But in this particular case, is there a big difference between electronic eavesdropping and harassment?
Well, I think it would definitely be qualified as harassment. The interesting thing that he said is that they wanted him to know that he was being harassed, and there are many people that are being toyed with in that way. I run into that quite often. Being a drug trafficking individual will get you in the program real quick.
Well, of course. Now, I would trust he's out of what he's done. It sounds like he is.
Yeah, but once you're a lab rat, they don't say, "Okay, you're out of the cage, buddy. Have a nice time. Go out and play we'll see you never." Once you're a lab rat, you're a lab rat.
How much manpower does it take to monitor people, or is it as easy as it might seem, where one guy can monitor 50 people at one time or something like that?
You don't even need people. You just have machines that do the monitoring,
Over and over again.
Sure, yeah. Now, what I tell my clients to do is carry a video camera with you.
Why?
Take pictures of any harassment that takes place.
Okay, in case you have to sue them or something?
No, just that see, here he's running the problem. Everybody thinks he's nuts. Now, this is a real difficulty that these people have. That once all this stuff is going on, nobody believes them.
No one believes them. You're right.
Everybody thinks that they flipped out.
They're seeing things.
That's right. Yeah, and especially with the voices, because like you and me and him can be in the same room, and he's hearing them, we're not. We just figure, they call them 5250s. That's what the cops call them. People that are, off the deep end. But anyway, to make a long story short, they got real problems, and nobody believes them, and that just makes it worse. And then their family leaves them, and their friends leave them, and everybody deserts them, and it's just part of the big experiment.
What can he do?
You got a real problem. That when people have tried to take lawsuits up against some agencies, most of the times they're dismissed under national security. In other words, if he was to...
You got to find a willing judge, and I guess you can't do that.
I like your sense of humor. Anyway, to make a long story short, that's your best bet, is to get the video and carry binoculars in your car and take pictures of everybody that's part of the program, and that's the way to go.
Go right back at them, I guess.
Yeah, because what happens is all of a sudden if they start getting their pictures taken, then they're not doing their job right.
Yeah. And they don't want anything to do with that. Let's go west of the Rockies. Welcome to Coast to Coast. You're on the air. Hi there.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hey, this is Merck over in Riverside.
Hello there.
Yeah, sounds like you're scaring all the tweakers tonight. Hey, check it out. I'm a computer science student over here, and lately, it seems like I've been kind of creeped out. I'm more a science-based kind of person, now I'm not too religious-based, but, it seems like there's something converging, like all this stuff is starting to come together. Like you've got this microchip embedded. You've got, correlating with your 666, mark of the beast or whatever. And is this biblically, like, for example, is this mark, this microchip, is it a voluntary thing or is it an involuntary thing?
Well, right now it's a voluntary thing.
No, I'm talking like biblically, like when they said, "Oh, the mark of the beast."
Well, we were never able to know what it meant exactly. Some people thought the mark of the beast was a computer, Social Security card. It keeps changing. Roger, I don't know if you've ever gotten involved in the biblical end, but that is something that has always fascinated me. This so-called mark of the beast. And then when you look at these computer chips and stuff, tell me their serial numbers don't start with 3 6s. Tell me that.
Well, it's interesting to note that some of this terrible legislation that's got us there has 666s in it.
Are you kidding me?
No, this one particular legislation that requires everybody to give Social Security numbers over on driver's licenses and any kind of licenses from the state. That was a federal mandate under Clinton, and that's under Section 666 of that law. And it's right there. You just look it up. It's it is what it is.
Absolutely. Wildcard line. Welcome to Coast. Hi there.
Hi, George.
Yes, sir.
I had a question for your guest. Similar to the movie Enemy of the State, where Gene Hackman was in the enclosed building with the metal shielding, do Faraday cages help to alleviate electronic harassment techniques?
Yes.
Is it to a bearable level?
It depends on the Faraday cage and its specifications. You'd have to look at what the frequency attenuation factors are on the Faraday cage. Different ones do different frequencies and different attenuations, and so you really need to look into the specifications of a Faraday cage, or if you're having one designed for a particular frequency, they're custom made.
What is a Faraday cage, Roger?
It's basically a shielding enclosure that's used for either testing the electronic equipment so you don't have outside interferences. Although in embassies they use them in foreign embassies so that when you go in there you can have conversations that will not be affected by electronic espionage.
Are some corporations been constructed, the buildings of, have they been constructed like this in order to avoid stuff like that?
No, normally military manufacturers have these areas where you go to discuss top secret stuff.
Okay. First time caller line, your turn. You're on the air with Roger Tolces. Hi there.
Hi, my name's Brian. Great show, and it's just fascinating yet so depressing what's going on. And
well, we can still fight.
My first question would be, how do you fight off the depression? Like, it just seems like America's doomed. I mean, how is anyone ever going to get elected that has, any values?
Well, I don't know how we're going to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you, but what I do is I go back and read about the founding fathers and their intent, and then try to reaffirm what we need to do. We need to definitely stay with the Bill of Rights, demand the Bill of Rights and our rights in our state constitutions, and stand up for them.
Have you ever been confronted face to face with some of these people? These people who are doing the monitoring and the eavesdropping and the harassment. Did you ever see them face to face, Roger?
Very rarely.
Hidden names.
No, these people don't come out. I mean, they're not confrontational, and they work in the shadows.
Are they electronic geniuses?
Obviously, they're the people that manufacture the stuff as that are the scientists that are part of the contractors are certainly brilliant people, no doubt.
I'm telling you, it's like James Bond movies.
Well, you're spending billions.
Yeah.
You're spending billions, and they are coming up with developments, and the developments definitely are, they can be used in a very positive manner, but on the other flip side, they can be used to destroy America.
Like these cameras that are now being sold to the public, they were probably been used how many years back by government before they came to market?
Well, I don't know. Cameras are cameras. I mean, they've been around for a while. It's just the question is, what's your intent? If it's just to keep people from being from criminal activity, that's one thing. But if it's to index a picture of everybody for secret databases to have information on everybody, then that's the wrong way.
And that's another thing. Exactly. East of the Rockies. Welcome to Coast. Hi there.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
All right, this is more of a request for opinion from you and Roger than a question.
All right, fire away.
I was a soldier a couple of years ago, and the chaplain seemed to really like to talk about Revelations in the book of Revelations.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he brought up was microchips being implanted in the hand or forehead. The hand because it was the muscle that you used most often, and it would run off muscular
That's absolutely, that's true. That's what we were just been saying. Yeah.
The forehead, something to do with the electronic impulses that were inherent in that area of the body. But I was wondering, he said that in the book of Revelations it stated that the sign of the beast would be evident in the hand or head. And I was wondering if there was any correlation between this and the digital implants that was the topic of conversation.
Well, I know I can say, just on my own experience with this program and everything else I've done, that if there is a sign of the beast, I think it has to do with something to do with computers, albeit the chips. Roger, do you want to get involved in that?
The only thing I can say is that 2 of the people I tested have the chips in their heads.
In their heads?
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
It's hard to say. The machines won't pinpoint them because it's not a scanning system that gives me X, Y kind of positions.
Wildcard line, welcome to Coast. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi, Tom, George. This is Tom.
Hi, Tom. Go ahead.
Hey, I got a first-hand knowledge about that gentleman in Michigan with the implant.
Yeah, what happened?
If it's the same one, because we had a case like that, too. I'm a police officer out here.
Okay.
And he kept telling me, that they implanted it in his head. We're just kind of laughing at him, thinking it's a joke. Well, he gave us a phone number. We called that phone number. It was an area code in Virginia.
Okay.
It ended up being some kind of CIA headquarters because that's what the guy said, and he asked us how we got this number. I told the gentleman that, we had this guy incarcerated and that he wanted to get out and you got to come and get him. The next day we called that number. It was disconnected.
That's weird.
Did anybody show up to get him out?
Nope. He ended up getting charged and everything, and then he did his time.
Unless he was in cahoots with somebody, made you call. But it was you had the area code though, right?
Right.
That's weird.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That is weird. Okay, thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Strange stories out there. Mm-hmm. Let's go to our running out of time here. Wildcard line, you're on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Good morning to my friends in the universe.
Well, we are here.
And I know that they're listening. I was wondering if maybe your guest, Paul, has found out if there has been any type of listening devices found, receiving devices found, on any of the UFOs that were in Roswell.
Well,
because I think technology today is so advanced that they needed something to get it going. They had to find it from somewhere.
Roger, you have had some UFO contactees as clients. How far did you take this?
All I can tell you is I've read Corso's book on Roswell, the day after Roswell, and I believe it.
Yep. As a matter of fact, his co-author, Bill Burns, dear friend of mine, and Bill believes it. He said, George, this was true. Yep. I'll tell you.
Yep, sure. Then all these military contractors that got these bits and pieces, boy, what a leap.
Well, that's true. Hey, we're running out of time. I want you to get some information out about you, your company, your website, and that conference again if you want to, Roger.
Yeah, sure. The conference, once again, was going to be on Saturday, July 12th, 13th. It's going to be, you'll find the info on it, controlledamerica.com. It's going to be in Davis, California. It will be a meeting of people that are harassment victims, and there's going to be lecturers there, some of the top people that know some terrific things, and I'll be there with all my equipment. And bugsweeps.com is mine, and you can email me there if you have any further questions. And, George, I've enjoyed bending space with you.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate that. And when you're in the bugsweeps.com, just click on those little machines that you see, because that'll take you into some articles and some patents and things like that. Fascinating stuff. Roger, I don't know what we can do as people to fight this, but it appears that it's heading that way, and I'm not sure there's anything we can do. Is there?
Well, Bob Marley said it. Get up, stand up for your rights.
All right. Thanks, Roger.
Yeah.
Roger Tolces. For Steve Carr, Dan Galante, Tom Dan Heiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, the ever-so-capable webmaster, Barbara Simpson, and Art Bell, I'm George Noory, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. I'll see you on our next edition. It'll be Friday the 13th, which it is right now in some time zones. Friday the 13th, open lines. I can't wait.